Early morning breaks over Lagos with a dim, bruised blue sky, the city still stretching awake as distant danfo horns honk impatiently. In the quiet compound of the Thomas family mansion, Zara, 23, and already carrying the tired stoop of someone twice her age, pushes open the heavy iron gate to begin her morning chores. Her broom scrapes over the patterned tiles of the driveway as she moves mechanically, mind already drifting to the long hours ahead, scrubbing floors, polishing silver, keeping her head low so as not to anger Madame Rose. Then she freezes. Right by the gate, almost blending into the shadows, sits a small, battered cardboard box. Her breath catches when she notices the tattered baby blanket spilling over the edge, and then a weak, rasping wail pierces the air. Heart slamming, Zara drops her broom. She kneels and peels back the blanket with trembling hands. There, nestled amid scraps of old cloth, is a tiny baby girl, no more than a few days old. Her skin is blotchy from cold, her fists clenched, her mouth open in a silent cry before the hoarse sound comes again. Tears spring to Zara's eyes. She carefully lifts the baby out, cradling her against her chest, rocking slightly as if by instinct. "Oh God, who would leave you like this?" she whispers, voice cracking. Her eyes dart up and down the empty street, half expecting to see someone lurking, watching, ready to reclaim the child. But there's only the distant rattle of a kick on the main road, a goat trotting past lazily. Behind her, the compound door bangs open. Madame Rose strides out, starched uniform immaculate, her face set in lines of permanent disapproval. She stops short when she sees Zara, her eyes narrow. "What nonsense is this, Zara? Put that thing down immediately before you bring Wahala to this house. Do you want police to come knocking, or for Ogre's visitors to see this scandal?" Zara clutches the baby tighter, swallowing hard. Fear coils in her belly, fear of losing her job, of Madame Rose's wrath, of the unknown weight she's just taken into her arms. But when she looks down at the baby, whose tiny hand curls around Zara's apron, something inside her shifts. With a shaky breath, she squares her shoulders, holding the child close as if shielding her from the world. "No, Ma," she says, softly but firmly, "I can't." Madame Rose's nostrils flare, eyes flashing with anger, but Zara doesn't move. She stands there in the pale morning light, clutching the wailing infant, her own tears falling freely, knowing in that fragile, terrifying moment that everything in her life has just changed. Zara came to Lagos with nothing but a small bag of clothes and a heart heavy with promises. Back in Abeokuta, her family scraped by on her father's meager farming income until sickness took him, leaving Zara, her frail mother, and her spirited younger brother, Tund, to fend for themselves. When her mother's health began to fail, Zara was only 16. She would sit by the bedside night after night, pressing damp cloths to burning skin, whispering prayers even as her mother's breaths grew shallow. When the end came, it left a hollow ache in Zara's chest that never quite healed, a gnawing guilt that perhaps she hadn't done enough. Determined not to watch her brother be swallowed by the same poverty, she packed her things and left for Lagos, finding work as a maid in the sprawling home of the Thomases. The job was grueling. Every morning started before dawn, scrubbing floors, polishing marble that never seemed to dull, ironing endless piles of designer clothes. Her pay was just enough to keep Tund in school back home, his eager letters scrawled in pencil, talking about his love of science, the only bright spots in her week. At night, Zara collapsed onto a thin mattress in a stifling, windowless room tucked behind the mansion's kitchen, trying not to mind the cockroaches that skittered across the floor. She held her mother's faded headscarf to her nose, breathing in memory. Despite her own burdens, Zara moved through the house with a quiet grace that softened even the hardest corners. The Thomas children, especially 8-year-old Daniel, would trail after her with giggles, begging her for extra chin-chin or stories about Abiyakuta. She never refused them, delighting in their laughter, maybe because it eased the ache of missing Tund, maybe because it felt good simply to be needed. Mr. Thomas, perpetually buried in legal briefs and late-night calls, barely seemed to register the staff's existence. But Mrs. Thomas noticed everything, or rather, everything she believed reflected on her status. Zara felt the woman's sharp eyes on her constantly, searching for faults to correct. If the glassware had a spot or a stray hair fell from neat braid, Mrs. Thomas's lips would curl. "Don't forget your place, girl," she would say, a perfectly manicured hand flicking dismissively. "This isn't your house. Remember that." Then there was Madame Rose, the head housekeeper, who ran the staff with an iron grip. She guarded the Thomas family's reputation like a dragon over gold, and her punishments for small errors, forgotten linens, late meals were swift and humiliating. Zara learned early to keep her head down, to nod and apologize even when her throat burned with unshed tears. But beneath her timid obedience lived fragile dreams. Each month, after sending most of her wages home, Zara tucked away a tiny envelope of savings, hoping one day to buy a sewing machine. In quiet moments, she sketched dress patterns on scraps of old paper, imagining a small tailor shop where she could craft beautiful things and never have to bow her head to anyone again. More than anything, Zara's heart remained tender to the vulnerable. Whenever Daniel scraped a knee, she'd scoop him up before he could start crying. When an injured stray dog limped through the gate one afternoon, she snuck its scraps in secret until it wandered off strong again. Perhaps it was her mother's memory, the helplessness she'd felt watching her fade, that made it impossible for Zara to turn away from anyone fragile. So, when she stood that morning by the gate, holding the abandoned baby close, it wasn't just shock or pity that routed her there. It was something deeper, older, a promise silently made at her mother's grave, a need to protect, to give comfort where she once failed. Even as Madame Rose's cold voice sliced through the dawn air, Zara's arms instinctively tightened around the tiny life against her chest, bracing for the storm she knew was coming. Unwilling to let go, Zara's hands shook as she carried the wailing infant through the kitchen door. Ignoring Madame Rose's scandalized gasp, inside the cramped staff quarters, she set the baby on her narrow bed and hurried to warm some milk in a chipped cup. The tiny girl's cries were weak, rasping, as if her throat could barely find the strength to protest. Zara's heart twisted. Carefully, she dipped a clean rag into the warm milk and pressed it to the baby's lips, coaxing her to suckle. All the while, she whispered trembling prayers, rocking her gently. "It's all right, little one. God will help us, eh?" She wrapped the infant tighter in the threadbare blanket, holding her close until the shivers subsided. But the fragile calm shattered when Mrs. Thomas swept into the staff quarters, her silk robe billowing behind her, irritation already sharp on her face. "What is all this noise so early?" Her eyes landed on the bundle in Zara's arms. In an instant, her features contorted with disgust and outrage. "Are you mad, Zara?" she shrieked, stepping back as if the baby might be diseased. "Bringing a street child into my house? Do you want to destroy my reputation? What if someone sees? What will they say? That we collect bastards from the gutter?" Zara dropped to her knees, clutching the baby desperately. Tears spilled down her face as she pleaded, "Please, Ma. She's so small. I only meant to help, just until we find someone. Please." Mrs. Thomas cut her off with a slicing gesture. "Enough. You've already embarrassed this household. Enough times. Either that baby leaves today, or you both leave. Do you understand me?" Zara's breath caught painfully in her chest. She felt Madame Rose, watching coldly from the doorway, no hint of sympathy in her sharp eyes. Outside, she could hear Daniel's soft laugh in the garden, oblivious to the heartbreak unfolding inside. Her mind spun. Where would she go? How would she feed the child? How would she even survive? But when she looked down at the baby's tiny face, streaked with tears and milk, her mother's voice echoed from long ago, weak but certain on her deathbed. Always protect those smaller than you, Zara, even when it hurts. With a strangled sob, she rose to her feet, adjusting the baby against her chest. She avoided Madame Rose's triumphant stare, kept her eyes away from Mrs. Thomas's scornful sneer. Every step felt like her heart was being torn out. She stepped through the grand foyer one last time, past glittering chandeliers and polished floors that had known her careful scrubbing. At the threshold, she hesitated, but only for a breath. Then she pushed open the heavy front door and stepped onto the sun-baked street, the noise of Lagos swallowing her whole dot. She had no plan, no money beyond the few naira hidden in her apron pocket, but she had the tiny life in her arms, warm and breathing because she had chosen not to abandon her. Holding the baby close, Zara took a trembling breath and started down the bustling road, into a future as uncertain as it was terrifying, driven only by the fragile, stubborn hope that somehow, somewhere, help would come. Zara wandered the teeming streets of Lagos, clutching the frail bundle against her chest, her feet blistered from hours of aimless walking. Everywhere she turned, doors closed. At the first private hospital she tried, the matron glanced disdainfully at Zara's sweat-streaked face and the whimpering baby, then snapped, without a police report, "Madame, we cannot accept this child." Next, a public clinic told her to come back with official guardianship papers or else face questioning. Her throat dry, heart racing, she made her way to a nearby police station, hoping for guidance, only to be met by officers who eyed her with suspicion. "So you just found a baby on the street?" One scoffed. Another leaned back in his chair, smirking. "You look like someone who stole her. Or maybe you want to sell her organs, Reby." When Zara protested, voice cracking, an officer lowered his tone, tapping the desk with bored authority. "If you want us to help, bring 5,000 naira first. Otherwise, we will lock you up for kidnapping." Tears threatened, but she swallowed them down, clutching the baby tighter. She stumbled out of the station into the glaring sun, her mind buzzing with fear. At a crowded government clinic later that day, a weary nurse took pity. She slipped Zara a small can of formula and an old cloth. "I wish I could do more, but please, take care. Lagos is not kind to girls like you." Zara broke then, sinking to her knees right there in the corridor, sobbing her gratitude. That night, with nowhere else to turn, she curled up under a wooden shed beside shuttered market stalls. The ground was hard, the mosquitoes relentless. The baby's tiny body was hot against her chest, breaths coming shallow and quick. Zara rocked her desperately, whispering fevered pleas into the darkness. "Lord, please, don't take her like you took Mama, please." Back at the Thomas house, days crawled by. Little Daniel roamed from room to room, asking Madame Rose, then his mother, "Where's Zara? When is she coming to make my cocoa?" Mrs. Thomas snapped at him to be quiet, her nerves frayed. She had heard the whispers over garden fences and through gate grills. "Did you hear? A baby was found right outside their gate. They say the maid ran off with it." Mrs. Thomas waved the talk away in front of her friends, feigning composure, but inside, her stomach churned with annoyance. She hated the idea of her family's name tangled in such common scandals. Meanwhile, Zara survived by sheer instinct. She offered to scrub shop floors or wash pans for buka owners, earning a few coins each day. It wasn't enough for a proper doctor, but she managed to buy paracetamol drops and sachets of pure water. Slowly, miraculously, the baby's fever eased. Her tiny eyes, once glazed and lifeless, began to follow Zara's face, under the sparse shelter of an abandoned kiosk. Zara whispered to her one evening, "Your name is Hope, because that's all I have left, and you're worth every bit of But the grind took its toll. One sweltering afternoon, after scrubbing a mechanic's oily floor for spare change, Zara staggered away, vision blurring. At the bustling bus park, people jostled past with crates and bundles balanced on their heads. Zara's knees buckled. She collapsed hard on the dusty ground, barely twisting to keep hope from hitting the earth. Her world dimmed, the shouts of bus touts blending into a dull roar. Nearby, Teo, a young journalist with a battered camera slung across his chest, was chasing a lead on transport officials pocketing fares. His camera was up, snapping pictures of overloaded Danfos, when the sight of a girl crumpled on the ground, clutching a baby, snagged at his conscience. At first he thought, another homeless teen mother, tragic but routine. His lens clicked almost automatically. Then he moved closer and noticed the small plastic ID still pinned crooked on her faded uniform. Zara A. Organlai, domestic staff. Something about it made his gut twist. He lowered the camera and stepped forward, gently touching her shoulder. Zara stirred weakly, eyes fluttering open in panic. "It's okay," Teo said quickly, his voice low and kind. "I'm not police. I want to help. Please, let me help you." And for the first time in days, Zara didn't feel entirely alone. Tayo sat with Zara on a cracked cement step outside a buka, his camera rolling gently as she clutched Hope close. Her voice was low, trembling, as she recounted everything from finding the baby by the gate to being thrown out by Mrs. Thomas. Teo's eyes darkened with disbelief and growing outrage. "You didn't have to take her," he said quietly, almost to himself. Zara shook her head, tears spilling. "But who else would? She was so small, just crying there. I couldn't walk away." Later that night, under the dim light of his small apartment, Teo uploaded the video with a caption that burned, asterisk, "A maid thrown out for protecting an abandoned baby. Who will help them?" Asterisk, by morning, the video had exploded. Thousands of comments flooded in from across Nigeria and beyond. Imagine, a girl with nothing showing more heart than people with millions. Who is this? Zara. Someone needs to give her a real home and a job. Where's that, madam? God will judge her. Twitter and Instagram filled with hashtags. Hashtag justice for Zara. Hashtag hope deserves better. Even local radio shows picked it up, replaying Zara's trembling voice over the airwaves. Under mounting public fury, the Lagos State Welfare Office scrambled to respond. Officials hurried to locate Zara. They finally found her at a roadside stall, sitting on a low wooden bench, gently pressing a damp cloth to Hope's forehead. Zara flinched when they approached, clutching the baby tighter. But the lead officer knelt in front of her, speaking softly. "Madame, we've seen the video. We want to help. Please, let us take the child for proper medical care. She'll be safe, I promise." It took everything in Zara not to bolt. Her body was wound tight with terror. What if they took Hope and never gave her back? But Hope's little body was hot again, her breaths coming in strained wheezes. With trembling hands, Zara finally let them lift the baby from her arms. The moment Hope was out of reach, Zara's strength crumpled. She sobbed into her hands, the sound raw and gutting. Teo knelt beside her, his arm around her shoulders. "You did the right thing," he whispered, voice thick. "And I promise, I'll keep telling your story. We're not done." Meanwhile, chaos erupted back at the Thomas mansion. Reporters crowded the high gates, cameras flashing. Neighbors peered over fences, eager for scandal. Mrs. Thomas stood at the doorway, flanked by an ashen-faced Mr. Thomas. Her carefully done makeup couldn't hide the tight fury pinching her features. "This is all nonsense." She snapped into a microphone shoved at her. "That girl was irresponsible. She brought a stray into my home without permission. We have children to protect our reputation." But the crowd wasn't buying it. Social media had already painted her the villain, the icy madam who tossed out a helpless maid and a dying baby. Someone in the press pool muttered, "Shameless woman," loud enough for cameras to catch. The clip went viral within hours. By nightfall, memes bloomed everywhere. One showed Zara cradling hope under the words "heart of gold." Beside it, a shot of Mrs. Thomas wagging her finger, labeled "heart of stone." Back in Teo's apartment, Zara sat curled on a faded cushion, eyes red and swollen. Every time her phone buzzed, strangers sending small donations, women offering to help her find tailoring work. She looked shocked, almost guilty. "I never wanted to shame them," she whispered. "Even madam, I just wanted hope to live." Teo took her hand, squeezing it firmly. "You didn't shame them, Zara. They did that themselves. You showed what real love looks like, and now the whole world sees it too." Outside, Lagos bustled, on with its usual relentless energy, but for Zara, everything had shifted. She had lost hope's warmth against her chest for now, but gained an army of unseen hands willing to lift her up. And though fear still curled in her belly, she clung fiercely to Teo's promise that this was not where her story, or hopes, would end. Weeks later, Zara found herself sitting nervously under the bright lights of a national morning show studio, hands clasped tight in her lap. The host smiled kindly, prompting her to share why she had risked everything for a baby that wasn't even hers. Zara's voice was small at first, but steady. "I knew what it was like to be left with nothing," she said, tears brightening her eyes. "I couldn't let her face this world alone." The clip of her soft words, paired with an old shot of her cradling hope, spread across Nigeria like wildfire. Donations flooded in from all corners. Small transfers from market women, large checks from businesses wanting to be associated with her compassion. Then came the most unexpected blessing. A prominent couple, well known for their charity work and their long private struggle with infertility, reached out. They offered to adopt Hope, but not to push Zara aside. They insisted she come live with them as Hope's nanny, promising she would always be part of the little girl's life. At first, Zara was overwhelmed. It felt too good to be true. But when she stepped into their airy, sunlit house and saw Hope giggling in a soft pink dress, reaching for her, all her fears melted. For the first time, Zara had her own small room with a window overlooking a garden. She was treated not like hired help, but like family, invited to sit at the dining table, consulted on Hope's care, even encouraged to pursue her own dreams. Teo continued to visit, his camera often forgotten as they sat under mango trees talking for hours. Their conversations moved from the heavy memories of her struggles to gentle laughter, to soft silences that spoke of something tender growing between them. Meanwhile, the Thomas family faced a harsh reckoning. The same couple who adopted Hope, eager to turn Zara's courage into broader change, launched a foundation to fund her dream of becoming a tailor. They built a training center in the heart of Lagos, offering poor young women courses in sewing and small business management. Every opening ceremony, every billboard bearing the program's logo, was a quiet rebuke to the coldness of the Thomases. Sometimes, Zara would stand in the new workshop, hands on smooth fabric, smiling as girls her age laughed and stitched with newfound confidence. Hope would toddle by her side, clutching a soft scrap of cloth, and Teo, always nearby, would catch her eye with a grin that promised this was only the beginning. Through it all, Zara never forgot the dusty morning she first found Hope by the gate, or the hungry nights she spent shielding her tiny body. But now, those memories felt like scars that had healed tender still, yet proof of how far love and fierce determination could carry even the most overlooked girl. She had saved one child, yes, but in doing so, she had saved herself, too. 2 years later, Zara sat behind the polished wooden counter of her modest but bright tailoring shop, proudly gazing at the hand-painted sign above the door that read, Hope. Threads, with smaller letters underneath, Every child deserves a chance. Sunlight streamed through the windows, catching on rows of colorful fabrics and finished dresses hanging neatly on racks. The gentle hum of a sewing machine mixed with the laughter of customers browsing inside. Suddenly, a squeal of delight broke. The quiet little Hope, now a sturdy, rosy-cheeked toddler, came toddling in from the back room, arms outstretched, giggling with all the joy in the world. Zara dropped her measuring tape and scooped her up without hesitation, hugging her close and burying her face in the child's soft curls. Teo stood nearby, camera in hand, capturing the tender moment with a quiet smile that held 1,000 unspoken promises. Zara pressed a kiss to Hope's cheek, her eyes bright with tears that no longer sprang from pain but from a gratitude so deep it made her chest ache. "Look how far we've come, my little box girl," she whispered, her voice catching on the memory of that cold Lagos morning when everything changed, hand in hand. They stepped out of the shop together into the golden afternoon light, Hope bouncing along happily, Teo's warm hand finding Zara's free one. The camera pulled back slowly, catching the cheerful sign, the laughter, and the trio silhouetted against a bustling street full of life and possibility as they disappeared into the sunlit crowd. It was clear this was only the beginning of their story, a quiet promise that love, courage, and second chances had woven them a future no hardship could ever unravel. Then the screen faded softly to black,